For this video, I'm going to show you how to do all of the things we've learned about linear regression on your TI-84 calculator. You have to start by turning on diagnostics. I'm not going to take you through that step, but please do follow the instructions. Click on Second and Catalog, which is above the 0, and arrow down to Diagnostics On and click Enter. Notice your screen will look like this and it will say Done. Once it's done, it stays on. The only time it would turn back off is if you reset your calculator or turn diagnostics off yourself. So now I'm going to use this data, and yes, it's kind of a lot of data. If you don't have this on your calculator right now, I would press pause and go ahead and enter it into your calculator yourself. So do that now. When you're doing that, I put this in L1 and I put this in L2, and of course we don't have to do anything with the summary stats, it's just the distance and the fair. So now you're going to essentially find the regression equation and the graph for your regression. So to do that, first of all, to enter the list, in case you need to do that, I'm just going to go to Stat and Edit, and notice that's where I have my L1 and L2. So if you need to do that, go ahead and do that now. Now I'm going to Second and Quit to get back to that main screen, and I'm going to go to Stat, Calc, and notice there are two, number 4 and number 8, that look very similar that say linear regression. And the only difference here is the order in which they put that equation. And since we're in statistics, and in statistics we always write our y-intercept and then our slope, I'm going to choose 8. You could choose 4 and it would give you the exact same values, you just have to be smart enough to put them in the right order. Notice here my x list is L1, my y list is L2. You shouldn't ever have to worry about a frequency list. To store your regression equation, the only time I would do that is if they're asking me then to make predictions from my regression equation. So up to you whether you want to do that. If you do, you have to arrow to where it says Store Regression Equation, and then click on vars, yvars function, and the function you want to store it in. So it's going to store it in y1, and then I'm going to arrow down to Calculate. And notice that is now giving me an A value, a B value, and my R squared and R. If you don't have diagnostics turned on, you won't end up with any of those R values there. So if that's what's happening to you, that's why it is happening to you. Notice now that that is the values that I will need for my regression equation. So now to write our regression equation, remember we always write our y-intercept first. I usually go to 2 or 3 decimal places. Please never ever go to 1 decimal place. So here I'm using the 177.21 rounded off correctly, and notice I've gone 3 places here, 0.079. Also keep in mind that because we are in statistics, we don't use x and y like this. We write it as fair hat, fair being what our y value, or our y variable was, and distance being that's what our x variable was. In order to get the scatter plot or see what that scatter plot looks like, I would do Second and Stat Plot, and all of them should be off. I'm going to turn one on, and I'm going to arrow down to the one that looks like a scatter plot, and choose L1 and L2. And once that scatter plot is turned on, then I can go to Graph. Usually the graph isn't, notice how here it's not working out very well for me. So I'm just going to click on Zoom 9, which is Zoom Stat, and notice now it's giving me the scatter plot that is created. If you want to check your residuals on your TI-84, you also have to use your stat plot. So I'm going to go back to Second and y equals. In here, I'm just going to keep the same stat plot so I don't have to mess anything up. Except for now, my y list is going to be my residuals. So how do I choose residuals? Second, List, and choose residuals. Notice the rest of it I'm going to keep exactly the same. I'm going to zoom 9 again because that's zoom stat. It's helpful for all of our statistical graphs. and that is my residual plot. This last thing is just kind of a fun little thing to see, but it's not necessarily important for our class. But if you did want to look at individual residuals, we would go into our lists, which remember that was in Stat and Edit, and then we would arrow over to the list 3 name, click on Second and List, and choose Residuals, and then enter. And notice we can now look at which values have the largest residuals, or which airfares are high above what we would expect or very low below what we would expect.